statement and then take questions.
Well, I feel like with media here, it's about that time of year, and was going over. We're off today, and in 2 weeks again we'll be off. But it's just one of those deals where here in 2 weeks after that next off day, 2 weeks from today, it feels like, man, you're in full season mode. We've seen the prognosticators. Everybody's kind of aware of it. I watched a little bit of Memphis, North Carolina the other night. So it's your juices are flowing. You're ready to play and feel great about the group that we have and excited to get this thing started.
Obviously, with the new season coming up, I know you're the big Ken Pom guy. I think you guys are 101 to, is that kind of the threshold you want to be in the preseason? What's your thoughts on it?
No, I'd rather be top 10. You'd prefer to be one. I mean, I think you kind of pay attention to, where you favored, where you're not favored, where does the rest of the league stand. I do think you think through what is the conference, um, where does the conference stand amongst everybody else, and then who do they think is going to be good? North Texas projected metrics, Ken Palm wise, is expected to be good. Where I think they were, I don't know, they were below whatever Ken Palm says according to the coaches poll. So it's one of those deals that you're a little fascinated by, but until I would like to see where we rank up experience wise. We'll know that after a few games and after everybody plays. But it's a guess right now. But I do like the fact that Kim Palm bases it on returning players and metrics.
For you guys to be picked fourth in the preseason poll, just kind of thinking from the outside looking in, what do you think it is about this team that the other coaches are thinking of so highly? Because
Yeah, one, it's returners. So I think when you get five of your top seven returning, that obviously helps. I think people are aware of what Quincy Ballard can do. I think people. You also have your, you have the two leading scorers returning in Xavier Bell and Harlan Beverly, and then Bijan and Ronnie. Bijan obviously, came on there at the end and he made plays, and then Ronnie DeGray. Same thing. I think people are aware of his impact, and he made strides as the season progressed. But to have those guys around for another year is rare. We only had three transfers, which was the lowest number. UAB had three, and which was the lowest number in our league. Our league averaged a little bit north of eight, but I think a lot of this is just based on who's returning and the core of the guys that we have there.
And I guess just all those guys that are returning, do you see any of those guys in particular that's kind of stepping up, being the mentor for all the newer guys? Or anything like that?
Definitely. I mean, that's a big part of it. You convey to your players often that a player coach team is much better than a coach team. So if I'm having to do all the talking, all the motivating, all the holding to standards, because the players don't have them, we're in trouble. And I think a lot of what you see is there's a lot of terminology that sometimes, especially younger players, can be confused by, but even transfers, knowing that they're coming in. The guys that are veterans have to explain it to them. And when I know that they're hands on in that, I feel really good about the people who gather in this locker room every day. So I do, the vets have done a tremendous job just educating the transfers, educating the new guys, trying to make sure they understand. Don't get frustrated. Like, we all went through this. It's a part of development. You're not going to understand everything that's going on. But I think the bigger message that the older guys have been able to get across to the new guys is how hard you have to compete just to give yourself a chance. And I feel like they've all done that.
What were you looking for in the transfer portal over the offseason, and who's really impressed you of the guys who were able to bring in?
Yeah, it was disappointed in our assist to turnover ratio, our inability to really handle pressure, and we needed to be able to address that. And so, having Justin Hill, not only was he a double-digit scorer, but third in assist rate in the SEC, and his assist to turnover ratio was really good. Zion Pipkin, I always thought he was that guy. He just valued the basketball, and we needed depth there. We knew Bijan and Xavier were coming back, but we needed to add depth there. The second thing is we needed to address shooting, not only from a perimeter standpoint, but also from the free throw line. We needed to make sure the guys that came in, when they got fouled, could they convert? So you have a Corey Washington who hasn't necessarily shot a lot of threes, but his foul rate's really high, and he can convert free throws there. And if you look at it, I think each of the guys that we brought in, Zane obviously was a part of that, of guys who could shoot, but, AJ's a big part of it too. And I was really pleased in our scrimmage on Saturday with Oklahoma State, just our conversion rate. We shot 69%. We were at 77 on Saturday, so that's quite a jump. 75 is going to put you somewhere around 120 in the country, and so 75 is okay. But I do feel that we need to be north of 75 to give ourselves a chance. So a lot of that was we needed to address our ball security issues, and we needed to address some shooting, but around the free throw line, we cannot be as deplorable as we were a year ago.
You guys have talked about toughness and rebounding being your identity on the defensive side. What do you want your identity to be offensively with some new guys coming in?
Yeah, the thing that we talk about a lot with our team is we're going to rebound the ball, we're going to take care of the ball, and we're going to share the ball. Like those are non-negotiables. And so at 78%, that would actually lead the country. We were at 76%. Being able to retrieve defensive rebounds the other day against Oklahoma State. So I felt like that was good. Offensively, we were able to get 36%, which was, in my opinion, pretty good for this group, simply because we don't have a lot of crashers. We name guys either crashers or get-back guys, so we don't have a lot of crashers, but I thought our crashers did a phenomenal job. Go back into the turnover, we're going to take care of the ball. That plays into defense in my mind. If you're playing a lot of disadvantaged basketball because you have live ball turnovers, you're going to be on the wrong end. And then we need to do a better job sharing the ball. We do have guys who can pass and shoot. Obviously, I think a lot of people saw the Bijan Quincy Ballard connection a year ago. But there's things that we need to do in order to just move the ball from a shot quality standpoint. I thought there was just too many times maybe where we settled maybe for an ISO situation or there was a better shot somewhere. So offensively, we when we go back and look at it, we need to share the ball. Now the assist rates aren't going to be great because teams, they're not going to be great night in and night out because of what teams do. Some people don't want assisted buckets, so they really fan out and allow you to play one-on-one. So it is going to differ every night, but I can tell you your better teams do a great job of passing the basketball.
And then with those live ball turnovers, how are you guys going to try to create more of those this year? Is it more of a pressure thing, or is it just kind of situationally? Or how do you guys go about creating more live ball turnovers?
Yeah, I would tell you that in order to be good defensively, you have to have multiple pick and roll coverages, and you have to have a team that's good enough to understand that there has to be a change. So in my mind, you have to have three that you can be able to move to after a timeout, after half, whatever the situation may be. I would tell you that we're a lot more aggressive in pick and roll. Primarily, we were a drop team last year and just kept Quincy and Kenny Poto and guys like that around the rim. We're not that this year. We're a lot more aggressive, specifically with certain lineups on the floor. So that definitely helps. I would also say that we're better kind of at keeping the basketball where it needs to be. Like if it gets into a deep corner, if it gets somewhere on the side, we do a better job of squeezing that. We're a little bit more aggressive there, but I think our rim protection by the guys who understand, without getting too wonky on you of the inverted triangles, I think our rims guys do a much better job. And maybe that's just because they've just had so many reps from a year ago to this year.
Does that mean you guys are challenging Quincy to do other coverages now?
Yeah, absolutely. Like he needs to be able to do more. I think when you talk to NBA scouts and people who have questions about Quincy Ballard, nobody doubts his ability to finish things. I mean, if you were to ask me, would you trade skill for somebody who can challenge vertically? The answer is yes. I think a lot of people say, well, can't do this, can't do that, but he's a top of square guy at 7 foot. So I'll trade a guy who is ultra skilled as a big for a guy who can go do that, just because you understand the rarity of both. But when you ask a number of NBA scouts, they talk about his mobility. And I think you kind of saw that with Zach Edey. Like his junior year, he was not projected to be drafted, and he got leaner. His mobility increased, and I think Quincy's done a much better job with his mobility, and he has the ability to get out there. If you've seen him run, he can get out and run, and he can turn it on at time. But absolutely, Quincy Ballard, we need him to be at different places on the court because his length is really a problem.
Does that kind of raise the ceiling of this defense if he's able to do different stuff like that?
I thought we were good defensively, the other day. I thought we were solid. Yeah, and there's also, again, going back to, you have to be able to have multiple pick and roll coverages. I mean, you get that if you have an elite shot blocker, they're going to get him away from the rim. So this isn't always something that you can always do. We'll see what it generates. But we're not going to be the most offensively skilled team in the country. So we need to generate a lot defensively. First of all, we need to limit you to one shot. And then secondly, we do need to generate some offense through defense, simply because it isn't as if we're putting a lineup out there that's going to be able to shoot 1 through 5.
I'm curious, the spacing, that's always so important. Last year, we saw, I guess, the lack of outside shooting that would kind of bog things down for you guys. Are you planning on, just trying to get creative and planning on kind of that lack of spacing, or do you think this team can be better spacers, better outside shooting team?
I think guys have really improved. I think Xavier Bell has really improved. I think Justin Hill adds a dimension. I think Harlan Beverly has really improved. Bijan's really improved. I thought Bijan just had a poor year based upon his previous seasons. And I would tell you that of those 3 guys, I throw Ronnie in there too. Those 4 have all gotten better shooting the ball. And then Zion Pipkin shooting north of 40%. We just through our practice sessions. 5-on-5, because we chart it all. And then I would tell you that Justin can shoot, and at the same time AJ can shoot. And so I feel like we've added pieces. I don't know. I mean, we need to play a few games and then just see where we are. It's one thing in practice. It's a whole different deal when you begin to play games and how people scout. We did not shoot it well the other day, but against Oklahoma State, but I thought that was more of a downhill team simply on account of their pressure. But again, we were able to handle the physicality. I don't know, to be honest with you, but I feel we'll be a much better shooting team than we are a year ago. But that's not how we're winning basketball games.
Do you think this
Go ahead.
do you think this team has more depth than last year's team? How deep are some of their rotations going to go?
Definitely have a lot more depth. I mean, we're too deep at every single spot. Practices have been great. I kind of talk to the guys often about the proverb of iron sharpens iron. And so the better we can get guys to be challenged day in and day out. I've always been impressed with the better wide receivers in the country from the high school ranks. Always went to Alabama because they felt that they were going to be challenged every day by the cornerbacks at Alabama. And I would tell you the cornerbacks probably got better because of the wide receivers and vice versa. And I feel like our depth every day, every single practice has been competitive. We're putting guys out there. The other day, referencing the scrimmage on Saturday, we were literally platooning guys and just bringing in a whole new 5. And they were fresh and they were able to add value. So I feel like we even had guys who made significant impact on the game the other day who, if somebody is asking you about a rotation, they were 11 or 12. So the depth helps a lot simply because we're going to get better the more these players are challenged in practice.
Bring in somebody like Justin, who you mentioned the turnover rate, values the ball. How much can that change this offense? Just adding possessions, not lost to turnovers.
Yeah, you definitely don't want empty possessions. And so I think the ability, one, where you're going to get hurt from a defensive standpoint is at disadvantage basketball. That's what live ball turnovers create. And so that alone, just making sure we get quality shots each time to be able to limit the turnovers. Again, this will, in my mind, I mentioned the three things that we talk to the team a lot, but we're going to rebound the ball and we need to take care of the ball. All right. I don't know that every single night we'll be able to share the ball, but we are going to rebound the ball and we are going to take care of the ball. And I go back to something Stan Van Gundy told me a long time ago. He says if you want a team that doesn't turn the ball over, play guys that don't turn the ball over. So let's not make this harder than it needs to be. We have guys who have done a good job with ball security.
Is there any update on Mate? And then the second part is how, if he's eligible to play, how do you fit him in with a guy like Quincy?
Yeah, no update there. I mean, he's able to practice, and so the things that we do practice-wise, and Saturday versus Oklahoma State it's considered a practice, but they're still deciphering everything that occurred there. He's kind of in a big situation with a number of other players that are across the country, and the NCAA is looking at this on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, no update there. If he becomes available, and obviously we anticipate that at some point, we'd be disappointed if it doesn't. I think you're going to see a different dimension of a big. He and Quincy Ballard, to some degree, are opposites. The things that Quincy can do well, Mate doesn't necessarily do well. And the things that Mate does really well is Quincy. I think what that allows you to do is play a number of different ways, and you can throw out different ways to play based upon how a game or what may be a weakness of another team. But they're definitely two different players.
You mentioned Zion, throughout the summer, just from the outside looking in, you bring in Justin Hill, Bijan's returning, you would expect, okay, it's a freshman, maybe that's a redshirt situation, but it seems like, is he kind of, almost forcing his way on the court? What's his, summer been like? And does he have a real chance for playing time right away?
Yeah, I would tell you the thing that I love about Zion, and it immediately stood out when we were recruiting him, is how competitive he is. Like, that dude loves to compete, and he reminds me there are some players who are in a situation where they're going to level up as players the more you encourage them. But there are other players who really level up the more you challenge him. He is a challenge guy. And I can tell you there's a lot of times when players get challenged, they kind of shrink from it. And it takes a little while. Some of it's just their personality of, they're aware now of things that I necessarily can't do. He finds out something or he gets beat in something, I promise you that next day, or maybe not even that long, maybe the next play, he's going to figure it out. And here's a young man. We were eating, I don't know, this was 2 weeks ago, and somebody said Xavier Worthy's 4.4 or 40-yard time was 4.2, and he says, I can do that, right? And it's just like, you can't, but I like the way you think. He's just a guy who really, really believes, and he's kind of unaware of what he's gotten himself into from a competitive side, because you've never played a game, so you don't know necessarily how good the opposition is. But that is a dude who is not going to shrink, and that's the best thing he has going for him. Our players hear me say this a lot: skill is king, but intangibles are supreme. And so you have to have a certain skill in order to be able, but if you have intangibles, it's going to override skill. He has them, and he has them at a really high level, and that's what's allowed him to do this. Now, him being able to shoot better than 40% from three is the skill that's kind of keeping him on the court, but trust me, he has the intangibles, and his competitiveness is what's going to allow him to be on the court.
Would that allow him to play off the ball, like alongside one of those ones?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always believed you need multiple ball handlers out there. I mean, Luka and Kyrie are kind of the two that stand out, but you just can't take Luka away because now you have Kyrie, and you just can't take Kyrie away because you have Luka. I think some of our turnover issues a year ago was people knew that, coaches aren't stupid. If you only have one playmaker on the floor, go get trap that guy and make the other 4 non-playmakers make plays. So we've had 2 guards on there. It's kind of how constructed teams in the past, and Zion helps. And so he can be out there with whoever.
One thing you talked about earlier this week in Texas was the expectation of this program is to be a March Madness team every single year. How many bids is the AAC is a blank bid league, and what's it take for you guys to get one of those?
Yeah, I honestly don't know, simply because I haven't seen the teams. You know, I don't think anybody would be surprised if it's 3, even 4. You know, I think when you go back into the conversation a year ago, I mean, there were 2 in UAB and Florida Atlantic, but South Florida was in the conversation, Memphis was in the conversation, and so there was nothing along there. I do think you have to schedule in order to give yourself a chance along those lines, and feel like we've done that. But at the end of the day, you have to win games. This is a program that expects to play in March, and I can tell you from a player perspective, I think every single player minus Bijan of the 4 of the 5 returners have all played, and then you have guys who they've come here for the Corey Washington came here to play in March. We are here to play in March. They'll tell you that one of the first graphics I put on the screen here in August is this is what a game for March looks like. And we go through the 5 things that you have to have a game for March. Well, we start that process when we first show up. And so this is about building a game for March that makes sure that you can advance in March. But, I mean, y'all have heard me say this. We're just trying to go 1-0, and we'll worry about that. But I do feel like every program's goal is to get to March. But this is one where it's more of an expectation.
Can you kind of expand on that, like a game for March? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, there's some things that you have to do. I mean, the first thing we talk about a game for March is you can tell the better teams that have a great shot selection. We go through it, and we go through it pretty heavily about what shot selection looks like. We show them, you know, from here's UConn, here's Purdue. I thought, you know, we went through the 30-win teams, and you go through what do shot profiles look like. I mean, we even do it from an NBA side. And so we go through a litany of things. There's 5 of them that we go through that make sure, and they'll hear about it more and more. But I bet everybody on our roster can tell you that the value of taking certain shots. Obviously, the best ones are layups and dunks. And you get through that. You make sure guys understand that. And again, once a week they're given their shot profile for all the practices up to this point. But shot selection, the shots you can force the other team to take, and the shots you take have a lot to do if you have a game built for March.
Last year, Coach, you finished 3rd in the AAC in total turnovers. You had more turnovers and assists. How are you going to improve on getting less turnovers and more assists going into this year?
Yeah, recruiting. You know, that was a primary thing, is we needed to get some players in here who provided depth, and Justin Hill does that, Zion Pipkin does that, and then we needed to get our current players better. We needed to get Harlan better in some of his decision making. I think if you look at it, if you look at Harlan in pick and roll on drive backs, a lot of people went under the initial pick and roll, and then he would drive it back. He ranks pretty high up there amongst NCAA players. And so I think some of it's just simplifying their game, but at the same time, you have to add the pieces who you believe can help. I go back to the Stan Van Gundy quote. You know how you prevent yourself from turning the ball over? Get guys in your locker room who value that as much as you do, and then play those guys. And feel like we've done that, but at the same time, we've got our current guys have gotten better.
Speaking of recruiting, how instrumental has OG been?
OG's been terrific simply because he lives, eats, breathes recruiting. I mean, there's not a day that goes by where have we checked on so-and-so? Have we checked on so-and-so? And so he brings up a lot of names, but if I ask him, I'm telling you, I could go 2 months and I could ask him about so-and-so. He can rattle off what has happened, and where he really adds value is not only just contacts via Europe and being able. He handed me a sheet the other day of 30 high major players he believes right now are in Europe, and when we've gathered film and we've done due diligence. But that may be something that we were never aware of. But he'll tell me, hey, XYZ recruit had a fall league game on Monday. He scored 18 points and had 7 rebounds. So it's easy for me because then I text, hey, congrats on your 18 points and 7 assists. They sit there and think I actually watched the game. But that's just OG feeding me information, and he's phenomenal. And you want people who crush their jobs, whatever responsibility they're given. He's one of those guys.
What's the process with like the returners? They have like established roles. They had X amount of shots, minutes from last season. Then you had guys that are pretty talented transfers. So these returners might not be getting the same minutes, the same shots. How do they kind of embrace that, and what's that process like for a coaching staff to try to sell them on this vision?
Yeah, I mean, one, to be honest with you, we haven't really gotten into roles. It's not a situation I know what guys thought was a year ago, but we've made it really clear that, if you're not adding value to the team, roles change. But a role is it may be for a game. Sometimes when you talk through it, you talk about a player's role for the season. I would tell you that if you were to ask our players, we're pretty blunt with them. We brought them in last week. Everybody had individual meetings. We went through everything and just where they're at. We'll see how this plays out. They'll have another meeting. We'll have an inter-squad on Sunday, and then we'll have meetings again next week. But, to be honest with you, we have an idea, but we haven't just said this is where it's at. We kind of want to let this play out. Going back to, I thought Jacob Germany would be a part of what we did last year, and it wasn't until after a few scrimmages that we realized that, man, this is going to be the route that we go. So we're still we've had 16 practices. We get 14 more before our first game versus Western Kentucky. So we're not into final decision making. So it's great because everybody's been competitive.
Losing Colby Rogers over the offseason, he was stepping up to take a lot more of the shots this year. Who are the players that you want to have the ball in their hands?
Yeah. I would tell you that you have older guys, so we need to find a way in order to get Quincy Ballard more shots. When you're number 1 in the country in field goal percentage, you need to get that guy more shots. It's not easy because the way his game is primarily around the rim, and people aren't just going to let you get there. I would say there's going to be other guys that shoulder a bigger load. Harlan Beverly's going to have to do more. Bijan, Ronnie, Xavier, all those guys are going to have to do more. But I would tell you, just from a shooting perspective and being able to get better spacing on the court, AJ can really stretch the court. And I think with the return of those guys, I think having AJ out there and Corey Washington simultaneously, you have 2 guys who can really feed off each other. And Corey can get to the rim. AJ, now make no mistake about it, Corey will shoot open shots, but AJ can kind of space the floor to allow that. So I don't know that it'll fall on any one guy's shoulders.
And just real quick, like injury update on Zane and I guess TJ. Anybody else with any other
Yeah,
injuries?
no, meniscus and a knee scope. We'll anticipate getting both those guys back this year. When, who knows? A lot of that's just based on rehab.
One more for me. Talking about the Harlan story with the scholarship and everything, it's become
Yeah.
quite the popular story. Can you kind of just describe how that all went down and what it says about this team?
Yeah, when we signed Mate, players are aware of scholarship limits, and everybody in the locker room's aware that we're 1 over. And one day we were finishing up weights. It was somewhere around the middle of July. And I just said, Harlan, you're aware that we signed Mate? And he said, yeah. I think the exact quote was, man, I've been meaning to ask you about this. And he said, oh, where do we get the scholarship from? How about if I volunteer mine? And I said, well, you'd eliminate some hard discussions that we were planning on having with some other people. He just said, how would this work financially? And I explained it to him, and he said, I'm better pen to paper. Can we go up to your office and you show me. And yeah, and it was less than 2 minutes. He's a graduate student, Harlan Beverly is, so his bill is not as extensive as an undergrad. And he just said, you know what, I want to do it. I'm in a situation financially to where I can help. If this means that the team is going to win and we can add more depth in order to allow us, he's experienced a Final Four, and so it was a sacrifice that, honest to goodness, he volunteered. And I think it speaks, one, to Rebecca, his mom, and Clayton, his dad, that they've raised a wonderful young man. And it's so rare. A lot of times, everybody's aware of the sacrifices that a mom makes and a dad makes on behalf of their kids. Very few times do you see young people making sacrifices on behalf of the greater good of everybody else. We expect older people who've been around the block to do it. And so when you see that out of a young man who cares about the greater good, and if this is a sacrifice on my part, in order to be a good team, everybody has to make sacrifices. Usually, though, those guys, they're not pocketbook sacrifices. His willingness to do that is a testament to who he is and a tribute to his parents. Thank you, guys.